Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic. What if Naruto revealed his true power? Part 1. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and comment for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Naruto walked down the streets of Konoha, his usual exuberance and carefree aura replaced by an intense focus as he recounted the events of his run-in with the three Sunagaku genin. His pink-haired teammate, Sakura, had been attempting to attack Konohamaru, the grandson of the Sandaime, for saying some rather unflattering things about her. He and Konohamaru's two friends, Moegi and Udon, had followed after them in the hopes of stopping Sakura before things got out of hand. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened when Konohamaru, not paying any attention to where he was going, ran into the Suna genin Kankuro. Sakura's attempts at placating the foreign genin had fallen on deaf ears as Kankuro tried to punch Konohamaru, only for Naruto's other teammate, Sasuke, to stop him with a pebble. That ego of his is really starting to give him a swelled head, thought Naruto with a small chuckle, startling several nearby villagers who had been shying away from the blonde because of the unusually cold aura around him. Although, I need to start keeping a closer eye on him. Ever since we returned from Nami, his attitude has become even colder than before. He's so rattled at the thought that there are people our age out there who are actually stronger than him, that it won't be long before he does something stupid and becomes a risk to everyone around him. Putting the topic of his unstable teammate aside, Naruto's thoughts turned to what the blonde Suna Kunoichi had told them. Despite his enthusiastic outburst that he should enter the exams, he knew that the only way to enter was as a team, and they would only be permitted if their sensei nominated them to participate. And if he was honest with himself, Team 7 was nowhere near ready to partake in the exams as they were. Sakura was almost completely useless as a kunoichi, not deserving of her title as the top kunoichi of their graduating class. Sure, the girl was book smart, but those smarts would only get her so far before her complete lack of battle prowess caught up to her and she found herself in a situation that she couldn't get out of. Sometimes he wondered if that was what Sakura was hoping for, that she would be some kind of damsel in distress and that Sasuke would come and save her as her knight in shining armor, not exactly the image a shinobi wants. She, along with almost every other girl in their graduating class, whether they passed or not, was nothing more than an obsessed fangirl for the king of all emos, Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke himself wasn't any better than Sakura, and in some ways he was even worse. While the young Uchiha did indeed have a great amount of skill for their age, the fact of the matter was, like Sakura, he didn't have the proper mindset to be a shinobi. Whereas Sakura was a useless fangirl, Sasuke was an unstable, spoiled emo with both a superiority and inferiority complex. Out of the three of them, Sasuke was the least ready for the Chunin exams, at least in terms of mentality. With the number of skilled ninja that were bound to be there, their new friends from Suna included, Sasuke's ego would take a beating at the thought of so many other people being on his skill level, or possibly even higher skill levels. Combine that with his inferiority complex, and you get a mixture that our young hero would rather not dwell on. As for Naruto himself, in terms of skill, most would say that he shouldn't even be a genin because of his apparent lack of any skill besides spamming clones. His taijutsu was horrendous, with no set style at all. His genjutsu didn't even exist with his horrible chakra control, and besides his shadow clone jutsu, he had no ninjutsu at his disposal. While in terms of mental ability, it was surprising to many that he even knew how to care for himself. But that was the Naruto the public knew, the one he was more than willing to let everyone see, the one he created to protect himself. Hokage Tower Meeting Chamber. You have all been assembled for only one reason, said the Sandaime Hokage to the gathered group of Junin and Chunin before him. Leaning back into his cushioned chair, the veteran shinobi looked over the assembled ninja. Most of them were wearing the dark green flak jacket that signified they were Junins, but there was a small cluster of lighter green flak jackets amongst the group, the Chunin instructors from the academy. Taking a long draw from his pipe, the aged Kage blew out a small cloud of smoke. It should be obvious by the members here. So it's already that time, trailed Kakashi in his usual laid-back manner. This was not the first time he had been present at one of these meetings, but it was the first time where he would be asked if any of his genin were ready to be nominated. Behind him, Genma Shiranui, a special Junin and an elite bodyguard to the Hokage, was chewing on his trademark Senbon. It's already been reported to the other countries, I've seen many of their genin already in the village. So when does it begin? It will begin in a week, said the Hokage as he watched his favorite blonde genin walking through the village with his crystal ball. Something is different about young Naruto today. As he continued to ponder on the rather un-Naruto-like attitude his surrogate grandson seemed to have about him, the image of the blonde genin vanished as he entered his rundown apartment. The Hokage mentally sighed as he watched the image fade. The same thing had been happening for the past 4 years, almost as if something, or someone, was blocking his telescope jutsu. Dismissing the thoughts concerning his surrogate grandson, the Sandaime lifted his head and saw that many of the assembled ninja were mumbling to one another. For the sake of those who do not know, I will announce it properly. 7 days from now, on the first day of the 7th moon, the Chunin selection exam will commence. The only people who showed any kind of reaction to the news were a few of the younger, less experienced Chunin from the academy. Now on to the nominations, we'll begin with those who are watching over our newest crop of genin. Knowing that was their cue, Kakashi and his fellow Junins stepped forward in front of the assembled group, and stood before their leader. Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma, are there any of your genin that you feel are ready to enter this Chunin selection exam? Towards the back of the crowd of ninja, Iruka furrowed his brow in confusion. Hokage-sama doesn't need to ask them, the 9 of them aren't ready yet. Kakashi, you may start, said the Hokage. Many of the ninja in the room thought that Kakashi wasn't going to nominate his team. Hell, some of them were still reeling from the shock of Kakashi actually passing a team and becoming a sensei. Many were surprised when Kakashi raised his right hand and formed a half-ram seal, but his words nearly gave them a heart attack. I lead Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno. Now I, Kakashi Hatake, nominate all 3 of these genin to take the Chunin selection exam. The Hokage smirked slightly at the nomination. He had a strong suspicion that Kakashi would nominate his team after his report of their little adventure in Nami no Kuni. Iruka's eyes widened as he listened to Kakashi's nomination and he couldn't stop from letting out a startled, "What?" Kurenai formed the same seal as Kakashi and made her nomination. Team 8, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame. I, Kurenai Uehi, nominate all 3 of them to partake in the Chunin selection exam. Asuma already had the seal formed when Kurenai finished. My team is number 10, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi. I, Asuma Sarutobi, nominate all 3 of my students to take the Chunin selection exam. A shocked silence followed the 3 Junins' nominations. This was first time in over 5 years that a rookie genin team had been nominated to the exams, and the first time since the reign of the Nadaime Hokage, that all of the rookie teams were going to take part. Hold on, shouted Iruka as he pushed his way to the front of the group. What is it, Iruka? Asked the Hokage, already knowing what had gotten the Chunin instructor so riled up. Hokage-sama, I may be speaking out of place, but all of the 9 names just given were students of mine at the academy. I know that all of them are very talented, but it is too early for them to be taking these exams. They have all only been genin for a few short months, they need more experience. I can't understand the Junin's reasoning for nominating the 9 of them. You forgot that I became a Chunin when I was 6 years younger than Naruto, said Kakashi as he turned to face the Chunin. Naruto is not the same as you. The academy instructor all but yelled at the masked Chunin. Are you trying to destroy these kids? The Chunin exam is. I can understand your feelings on the matter, Iruka. It must be upsetting to you, but Kakashi, stop already, said Kurenai, not liking the tone her fellow Junin was using. Stay out of this, Kurenai. Iruka needs to understand that they are no longer students in his care, they are soldiers under my command. Iruka ground his teeth together as he glared at the famed copy ninja, knowing that there was not much else he could do at this point. Deciding to break the tension that had enveloped the room, the Hokage attempted to get the meeting back on track. Now that we have heard from the senseis of our rookie genin, are there any others who wish to nominate their genin for the exams? A few of the other Junin, most of them senseis for teams that had been genin for a couple of years, stepped forward to make nominations, but everyone's attention was drawn to a figure dressed in almost all green as he stepped forward and stood by Kakashi. I lead last year's Team 9, Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee and Tenten. I, Might Guy, hereby nominate all of my youthful students take part in the Chunin selection exams. Said the spandex-wearing Junin, ending with his signature, nice guy, pose, complete with sparkling teeth. Turning to his self-proclaimed eternal rival, the master taijutsu user's tone became more serious. Kakashi, my eternal rival, are you certain your youthful genin are ready for a challenge such as the Chunin exams? I myself held my team back for a year to hone their skills so that they would be better prepared for what these exams will bring. Kakashi looked up from reading his favorite orange book, ignoring the glares he was getting from the kunoichis present. Huh, you say something, guy. Ah, curse you, Kakashi. You and your hip attitude. Everyone's sweat dropped as they watched the antics of the two renowned Junin. Anyway, said Kakashi, putting his nose back into his favorite piece of porn, what I do with my team is none of your concern. Besides, who are you to judge my students' skill when you haven't even seen them in action? Before Guy had a chance to respond, the voice of the Hokage interrupted him. Enough, now if there are no other nominations for the exams, then I officially call this meeting to a close. Standing from his cushioned chair, the Sandaime vanished in a shunshin, quickly followed by the assembled group of ninja. Had any of them stayed for a few seconds more, they would have noticed a shadowed figure appear in a darkened corner of the room before silently disappearing. This ought to be interesting. I wonder how Naruto will take the news. Naruto's apartment. Sitting on his bed in the lotus position, Naruto's eyes were closed as an aura of calm settled over the normally hyperactive boy. Now that he had a chance to think in peace, the blonde shinobi focused his thoughts on the one thing, or person in this case, that had been troubling him, Gaara no Sabaku. Though it may come as a surprise to many, Naruto was very skilled in the art of reading things, both human and creature. They may have only been face to face for a few short minutes, but that was all the time Naruto needed to get a good feeling for the other boy's state of mind. He knew from first-hand experience that the dark and murderous aura the boy projected was nothing more than a defense mechanism he used to protect himself. But what he was protecting himself from, Naruto did not know. That, however, was not the reason the redhead troubled Naruto so badly. What troubled him was the chakra the boy exuded. The young shinobi's chakra was thick with uncontrolled bloodlust. Despite the falseness of his aura, there was nothing false about the power and thirst for blood his chakra created. It was a feeling Naruto was all too familiar with. Being what he was, it was easy for him to identify the source of the young shinobi's power, a biju. It was the only logical explanation Naruto could think of, and one that caused a chill to run down his spine. He understood how the boy must have been treated for him to turn out the way he did, as there was a time when he had almost succumbed to the same fate. If it were not for the Sandaime Hokage and his true sensei, he had no doubt that he may have turned out just as Gaara had. His morbid thoughts were interrupted as he felt a very familiar presence appear on the far side of his room. Barely cracking one eye open, Naruto glanced at the newcomer before returning to his meditation. Is something wrong, sensei? It's rare for you to come to my humble abode. A deep, throaty chuckle escaped the man's lips as he answered, No, nothing's wrong. I just thought I'd drop by and let you know that Kakashi has nominated you and your team for the upcoming Chunin exams. So he really did decide to nominate us, huh? Heaving a resigned sigh, the blonde opened his eyes fully and looked over at his sensei. I suppose it was to be expected, though I had hoped he wouldn't. As a team, we are simply not ready for this. That may be, said the man as he stepped out of the shadows, revealing his rather tall frame and long spiky white hair, but perhaps these exams can serve as the catalyst to help your team reach its full potential. Maybe, mumbled Naruto, but the only way that could happen is if Sasuke can get past his insecurities and if Sakura actually starts taking her career as a kunoichi seriously. And you and I both know that the possibility of either of those happening, let alone both, is slim to none. Despite the unlikeliness of it actually happening, Naruto couldn't help but hope that his sensei was right, and that the exams would help to bring them together. Though he had a feeling that they could just as easily cause the rifts in Team 7 to only get larger. I know that, Naruto, said the white-haired man. In all honesty, the blonde genin's situation was far too reminiscent to his situation with his former teammates for his liking, and he would do anything to prevent his apprentice from going through that pain. Naruto, I've told you on more than one occasion that your team is almost exactly like mine used to be. I understand how frustrating it can be hoping that your teammates will get past their demons and truly learn to work with you. But I am telling you now, don't make the same mistake I did and foolishly hope that things will work themselves out. If you truly wish for your team to become what I know it can become, you will have to take matters into your own hands. And what do you propose I do, Jiraiya-sensei? Asked Naruto with a little heat. I've tried numerous times to approach them about helping them, and every single time they brush me off as an annoying, loud-mouthed idiot that doesn't understand anything about them. There's nothing else I can do without them getting past their insecurities first. Yes, there is, said Jiraiya after a long moment of thought. There is one thing you have yet to try, and though you may not like it, it has the best chance of success. Naruto narrowed his eyes in confusion, prompting his sensei to elaborate. If the two of them won't listen to Naruto Uzumaki, dead last of the academy, said Blonde's eyes widened slightly as he realized where Jiraiya was going, then perhaps they will listen to Naruto Namikaze, son of the Yondaime Hokage and apprentice to Jiraiya of the Sannin. Are you serious, sensei? Said Naruto in a near whisper. Are you sure it's a good idea to tell them? What about my father's enemies? Won't they try and make a move against me when word about my heritage gets out? They most likely will, relented Jiraiya, but despite that mask you wear, we both know you have the skills to go head to head with most Chunins out there. Naruto absently nodded as he was still recovering from the shock of Jiraiya claiming it was time he took on his true name and mantle. While it may indeed help with the situation concerning his teammates, letting this information come to light had many more consequences and repercussions as well. How would the villagers react? Would the revelation make even a few of them look past their hatred of him and recognize him for what he really was? Or would they deny it vehemently and hate him that much more for trying to take his father's, their hero's, name? His inner musings were stopped by a firm hand being placed on his shoulder. Looking up into the eyes of his godfather, Naruto saw that the man had a knowing smile playing across his features. I know this is a big decision for you to make, Naruto, and you're worried about the repercussions that will undoubtedly come from it. But remember, just because you're revealing this information to your team doesn't mean that you have to tell the rest of the village about it. Let this serve as the first true test to see if your team truly deserves your trust and friendship. Reveal a little of your skills to get their attention, and then tell them what you need to tell them and swear them to secrecy concerning it. We can deal with the rest of the village in due time, said Jiraiya with a reassuring squeeze to his student's shoulder. Knowing the blonde needed some time to think, Jiraiya released his shoulder and moved towards the shadows he appeared from. I'll be staying in the village for the duration of the exams and a little while afterward. If you need to talk, you know how to find me. With that parting statement, the toad sage walked into the shadows and vanished in a silent shunshin. Naruto closed his eyes, regaining his meditation as he mulled over what his godfather had said. The idea had merit, that he would willingly admit, but would it truly work? Could revealing who he truly was and what he was truly capable of really help to bring them together? Even if Jiraiya believed it would, as a shinobi, he had to look at all of the possibilities that could come from his decisions. While these revelations could potentially work, they could also prove disastrous. Was he willing to risk pushing Sasuke, and by extension Sakura, away even further by showing them that he was stronger than he seemed? With a soft chuckle, Naruto delved deeper into his meditation, his mind clearing as he reached his decision. One that would drastically change not only his life, but the lives of everyone he knew. Training Ground 7 the next morning. Sasuke Uchiha was annoyed. First, his attempt at learning another fire technique this morning ended in failure, and now he had the unfortunate luck of running into Sakura on his way to a team meeting, and the pink-haired girl wouldn't shut up or stop asking him for dates. Thankfully, they weren't far from the training ground, so he could start practicing his newest jutsu again, and Sakura would go sit on the sidelines watching him like she always did, giving him at least some peace and quiet for a few hours. That plan was put on hold as they entered the training grounds to a very unusual sight. Naruto was there, though that wasn't very unusual. The blonde shinobi was always the first one to arrive, his apartment being relatively close by. No, what was unusual was the fact that the blonde was sitting on top of the center training post in the clearing, apparently meditating. Sasuke's eyebrows rose at the sight, a clear sign that he was surprised at the behavior of the normally loud-mouthed ninja. Sakura likewise was surprised at the out-of-character behavior of her teammate. Usually the orange-wearing genin would start pestering her for dates the second he saw her, or start challenging Sasuke to prove that he was better than the dark-haired teen. Slowly approaching her teammate, Sakura tried to get his attention. "Naruto, is everything okay?" she asked, not entirely sure if she liked this new side of the blonde or not. Though she would never admit it to anyone, she actually liked it when he asked her for dates. It made her feel more confident about herself that someone, even if they were as annoying as Naruto, thought she was attractive and would openly express their feelings for her. The blonde didn't answer for a few minutes, and that caught even Sasuke's full attention. That Naruto would seemingly ignore Sakura of all people for any amount of time was not a good sign. Thankfully, to both his teammates' hidden relief, Naruto eventually answered, though his voice wasn't the loud, grating at times, noise they had come to expect from the blonde. "Get what training you can in before Kakashi gets here, because once he does we all have much to discuss." The tone of finality in the blonde's voice caught the other two genin completely off guard, but then what he said finally sank in. What the hell could Naruto want to talk about that could be important enough to cause this sudden change in the blonde's personality? Wary of what was to come, the two remaining genin of Team 7 decided to heed their teammates' advice for once. Sasuke moved a couple of yards away and began to practice with his jutsu again, while Sakura, surprisingly, went to a tree nearby and began to use her chakra to walk up and down the trunk like they had seen Kakashi do when he first showed them the exercise. An hour later, Naruto's voice broke the silence that had enveloped the three genin. "Get out here, Kakashi, now is not the time for your dramatics." Sasuke and Sakura, who had stopped training a few minutes ago, looked at the still meditating blonde in confusion before a rustle of leaves alerted them to the arrival of their sensei. Eyes widening in surprise, the two turned to see Kakashi a few yards away from them, for once not reading his signature smut book. Kakashi himself had his one visible eyebrow raised in surprise that he had been noticed, let alone by Naruto of all people. Though he wasn't truly trying to conceal his presence, for a genin to notice a hidden Junin was no small feat. Deciding to deal with the change in his blonde student later, Kakashi prepared to tell the three genin about the Chunin exams, only to stop short as Naruto spoke up. Before you begin, Kakashi, there is something that all of us need to discuss. Not giving his sensei or teammates a chance to ask the question they all wanted to ask, Naruto pulled a pre-made seal tag out of his hip pouch. Throwing the piece of paper at the ground a few yards away, Naruto formed the seal of the tiger and whispered, "Guardian of Silence, Fuin." Immediately, the seal tag began to glow a soft blue before a dome of chakra spread across the field, invisible to all who did not possess a dojutsu. Opening his eyes, Naruto jumped down from his place on the training post, an unusually serious expression on his normally cheerful face. For the first time since arriving, everyone got a good look at the blonde Jinchuriki, and only now did they realize the change in his attire. Gone was the hideous orange jumpsuit he was known for, and in its place was clothing befitting a true shinobi. Black cargo pants tucked into mesh armor around his shins with black shinobi sandals covering his feet. A deep blood red, sleeveless shirt with a black Uzumaki swirl on the back over a short-sleeved, skin-tight, mesh armor shirt covered his torso, and black bandages wrapped around his forearms. He had a shuriken holster attached to both of his thighs and 2 hip pouches on the back of his pants. He had changed his headband's cloth from blue to black with longer ends that reached his shoulders, and oddly enough, he also had 2 medium-sized black scrolls with red edges attached to his lower back, just above his hip pouches. Snapping out of his momentary funk, Kakashi spoke up, "Well, Naruto, I must admit that you certainly live up to your title as the #1 unpredictable ninja. I like the new look, it suits you, but I have to ask, since when have you been able to perform Fuinjutsu? It's one of the most obscure arts known in the ninja world, not something one learns from a scroll or text on their own." Naruto smirked at the suspicious undertone in his sensei's voice. He knew that his little display would garner suspicion from the Junin. In fact, he was counting on it. "You're right, Kakashi," he said with his smirk widening as he watched his supposed sensei's hand twitch at the lack of sensei to his name. "It's not something one usually learns on their own, and I am no exception to that rule. My real sensei, the one who has trained me since I was 8 years old, taught me the art." "Real sensei? And who exactly would that be, Naruto?" asked Kakashi, losing all pretense of hiding his suspicions and letting his right hand slip into his hip pouch. "My godfather," said the blonde, his smirk almost splitting his face as he watched the 3 remaining members of Team 7's eyes widen in complete surprise. "Godfather?" questioned Sakura, the statement finally managing to knock her and Sasuke out of their stupors. "I thought you were a clanless orphan," she asked before she remembered his reaction to people making assumptions about his life in Nami, and she covered her mouth. Knowing how he was likely to react to the question, the pink-haired girl immediately tried to apologize. "Oh my god, Naruto, I'm so sorry." A dry, mirthless chuckle escaped the blonde, a sound that caused even Sasuke to shudder slightly. "Don't worry about it, Sakura. It means a lot to me that you care enough to even attempt to apologize for something like that." Sakura attempted to smile at the blonde's admission, but it slipped when she realized that he hadn't said her name with the usual chan suffix. "But to answer your question, I am an orphan, but that doesn't mean that I don't have people out there who care about me. As for being clanless, well, that's one of the things I am going to tell you." Kakashi's mind quickly made the connection in the blonde's words. "You know who your parents are," he said in a soft voice, knowing exactly who Naruto's parents were. Finally, the silver-haired Junin had a chance to quit living a lie. He finally had a chance to be the sensei he always wanted to be, not the one the council and elders forced him to be. He would be the first to admit that he was a lousy sensei, not only to Naruto, but also to Sasuke and Sakura as well. The council had blackmailed him into focusing solely on Sasuke's, and to a lesser extent, Sakura's training, but to completely ignore Naruto so as to keep him weak. It tore him up inside that he was effectively being told to leave Naruto to the vultures without any formal training to defend himself. Though it only added to his shame, he had done the absolute bare minimum in regards to training Sasuke and Sakura, and lying to the council about their progress. But now, he had a chance to truly train his team the way he wanted to train them. Even if the council tried to deny the boy his heritage, with the backing of the Hokage, and the boy's mysterious godfather, he could tell the council to, quite literally, piss off and quit interfering with his team. Sasuke's thoughts were a blur as he had come to a similar conclusion as Kakashi. If he was interpreting what Naruto had said correctly, then it meant that he and his blonde teammate had backgrounds that were even more similar than he first suspected. Ever since he learned a little of Naruto's past during their mission in Nami no Kuni, his respect for the blonde had steadily grown. He understood the pain of loneliness that he had been forced into ever since Itachi had murdered their clan. That alone allowed them to understand each other on level that no one else could ever hope to. But if Naruto truly was from a clan, then maybe, just maybe, he could finally have someone he could actually relate to, someone who could actually see him for him, not his name, someone he